Welcome back to the Gardening Joy and Holly Radio Show. Farm and garden in ultimate comfort. Farmer's Defense has lightweight and durable sleeves made to protect you against the elements while farming. Farmer's sleeves offer unparalleled protection of arms and skins for any farmer, gardener, or outdoor worker. Say goodbye to irritated skin and sunburns in the garden. Their sleeves offer cooling comfort protection against the elements outdoors. An alternative to thick clothing, Farmer's Defense is made of wicking material with UBF protection factor 50 plus to protect you from allergens and scratches. To find all of their great products and more, visit farmersdefense.com.
Gardening is an activity that almost anyone and everyone can do. It's only limited to what you decide that you can and can't accomplish. And oftentimes we are our most worst critics saying, well, we can't do that because of X, Y, Z. But you really can, and there's multiple different avenues in which you can achieve gardening success, from elevated garden beds to keyhole gardening to fill-in-the-blank tool to help you be more mobile in the garden.
Right, and that's the biggest thing is sometimes people get in their head or they think about maybe their own personal expectations, or they compare themselves to others, things like that. And there's a lot that you can do no matter your mobility level. And there's, even nowadays, there's so many different aids and ideas and hacks and tricks and tips and blah, 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 where you really don't have to be limited. And the other thing is that a lot of people get stuck in this all or nothing thinking when you don't have to be that way. You can do a little bit at a time. You can find things that work for you. And even, there's different Facebook groups for mobility. At this point, there's different social media accounts, things like that. So the help is out there. And that's one thing is it's okay to ask for help or use an aid, whether that be something like, a stool or a garden cart that you sit on, or you have your friends or family help you with part of the process because you can't lift those heavy soil bags or fertilizer bags or whatever mulch anymore. Or maybe you have like a community garden day and you all help each other, things like that. It's okay to ask for help. A lot of times you might think, well, nobody wants to help me, but if you don't ask, you don't know.
Right. You miss out. What is it? Wayne Gretzky says you miss every shot you never try to take, or something like that.
Something like that. Yeah. So if you don't take the shots, you're not
ask.
Have delicious tomatoes.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
Wayne Gretzky was a very successul hockey player. For those who are not familiar with whom that...
You miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
There you go. And also, that's...
And Michael Scott.
Yeah.
The Office fans are cheering right now. Yeah. You can utilize stools, carts.
I talk a lot about The Office.
Yeah. Utilize stools, carts, 5-gallon buckets. Sometimes if you...
And don't worry about your weight, because they have tools and these carts and buckets and things that are manufactured for very large and heavy weight capacity.
Right. And they do have different things. There's even this like little collapsible stool that a lot of people will use sometimes for like walking around amusement parks just to sit on when they're waiting in line. And those hold, I think, up to like 500 or 600 pounds. So you don't have to worry about that. These things are now made to
it's not 1993 anymore.
And you might not find this at your local garden center.
Nope.
So you might have to go online. And unfortunately, I don't want to say unfortunately, I don't think there's anything wrong with having to buy things online.
No,
but you may have to expand your horizons.
Right, because these stores, you have to look at it from their perspective. Why it doesn't make sense to carry 83 of these things when one gets sold a year.
Right, and that's exactly it too. Being cognizant.
We're in a click-to-ship world.
The supply and demand, right? So yeah, you can utilize all sorts of things. I personally sometimes just like the 5-gallon bucket, or we have this like. I don't know what that thing is.
It's a big plastic tub. It's a 25-gallon plastic tub or something that's about 18 inches high.
Right. And so even for me, if I don't like the heat or being in the direct sunlight for a long time. So sometimes I'll help in the garden, do some gardening, and then I'll say I'm going to go sit in the shade for a few minutes and have some water. And you should be taking water breaks anyway, no matter what your mobility level is, no matter how fit or athletic you are, you should be drinking water, especially on some of these warmer days.
Beer is not a water.
Coffee,
wine is not a water.
Coffee is not a water.
There is their time and place for them. But
Yeah,
when you're in a
absolutely.
90-degree heat digging soil, that's not the time or place for these.
No. So, yeah. So that's something that you want to keep in mind is it's okay to take breaks. It's okay to take lots of breaks. It's okay to sit on something. It's okay to, even if you want to build your raised bed to a higher height, maybe you do something where you put it on cinder blocks, or you get kind of creative. Another thing I want to mention is stretching. And so maybe you just do some simple stretches before and after. If you
Because you're doing things here that you don't normally do. That's
Right.
why the stretching is important.
yeah, and stretching helps prevent an injury. And a lot of people don't always think about that. They think, oh, I'm just going to garden. It's not like I'm going on, to the gym. I'm going on a long walk or something like that. I'm going for a run. But you are moving your body in ways. So stretching helps warm up those muscles, gets what's called the lactic acid flowing between the muscles and the joints, etc. So stretching is important.
And whether you, and they have tools now that are accessible for longer reach, for elevation or shorter reach, any type of distance in which you need to utilize, there's a tool that is specific, what is it called? Ergonomic, that is more designed, that these companies have figured out what is the better shape of a shovel than what a traditional dirt shovel is for in the garden for people who are not regularly doing that type of activity. A dirt shovel is fine if you're, fill in the blank occupation and that's what you do for a living. But when you only dig in the garden a couple of hours a month, that becomes very uncomfortable or unnatural for you. And that's why they have these tools that have been scientifically designed where it is an easier lift or dig or scrape than a traditional your grandparents type of tool.
Right. And that's exactly it. So it's something that you want to keep in mind. I was going to say something.
But limited mobility doesn't mean no gardening.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean no anything. As long as you have the will and the desire, you can accomplish it.
Yeah, and there's things like you might not normally use some sort of like hiking pole or cane or something like that walking around your house, your yard, but maybe your garden has a little bit of uneven soil, uneven terrain. There's no shame if you have hiking poles or a cane. Just go to the local drugstore, get a cheap cane, whatever, to kind of stabilize yourself, or whatever you may have.
If you're not there yet, you probably will be at some point. We all will be there at some point.
Yeah, and there's no shame in that, and it's better to prevent things than to have to take a fall or twist an ankle or hurt yourself.
Yeah, the $7 cane's a lot cheaper than the hospital ride or the insurance claim you have to file because you fell.
Yeah, and sometimes
and then with the cane, if you're of age and you have grandchildren, you can use it to poke them.
Yeah,
as they run through the house. Slow down, Timmy.
There's lots of options for a cane, apparently. Yeah. So that, that's there's no shame in that. And again, I just want I talked about this before, but do a little bit at a time. If you
do a little, but do it often.
Yeah. So maybe once a day after the sun goes down a little bit, is lower in the sky, or early in the morning, you decide to get out there and do some weeding, and you do that every morning, every other morning or something like that. That's okay too.
Or figure out tools in which you can limit the amount of weeding you have to do. Like we're going to use weed cloth next year in our raised beds to greatly reduce, because Holly and I spent like 3 hours one afternoon weeding to everything. And 2 weeks later, it didn't look like we did anything. It looked like a pasture was seeded. And we're of age that we don't want to spend 3 hours plus in the sun doing that. So we're going to limit the amount of weeds that we can come up by using a weed cloth or a weed barrier. Well, with that being said, Holly, if you don't think you're mobile, you probably are, and you can achieve it. And summer is over. Fall has begun. Nights are getting colder. Days are getting shorter. Kids are back in school in most parts of the country, but it will all catch up with us sooner or later. And the yard still needs some love and care from us.
Yeah, just because we're basically in fall, We don't want to forget about our yards and those Japanese beetles either. They may be gone, but they're not far. Not only did they feast on your roses and berries this summer, they laid eggs in your turf so that they can start again next year. You can take a stand with Phylum's Grub Gone. Grub Gone is a non-chemical BT granule that specifically targets scare pests and their larvae. Simply apply the granule with a spreader, irrigate into the soil, and let the naturally occurring bacteria do its job.
Not only is Grub Gone easy to use, but it's the only non-chemical choice that effectively controls grubs. And the best part about it, it's non-toxic to bees and other pollinators and beneficial insects. In fact, Grub Gone has no label restrictions for use around your flowering plants. So you don't have to worry about them taking it up and killing the hive or their colony. You can find Grub Gone at phyllombioproducts.com. That's phyllombioproducts.com, PHYLLOM bioproducts.com, or grubgone.com.
For more information, please visit thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com.